Welcome to I Could Never, a show about non-monogamy and the many ways it can look. I'm Genevieve from Chill Polyamory on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And as always, joining me is my hype man and my partner, Ishik.
I'm just over here making some fun faces for all the non-video watchers. Just having a fun day. I'm feeling good. But there's a reason I'm feeling good.
Why is that?
You don't know what that reason is?
Go on, tell me.
I'm going to tell you. It's because we're joined by our wonderful guest, Dr. Manijay Batty.
Hey, hi y'all.
For anyone who isn't familiar, our guest today is Dr. Manijay Batty. She is an Iranian-American professor and licensed psychologist. She's queer, neurospicy, and polyamorous, and we are incredibly lucky to have her. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
You are excited. We're all excited. And I'm telling you, you're excited because I am a future soothsayer and I can tell what's going to happen 5 seconds in the future whenever I am hosting a podcast.
Oh, okay. It's a very specific
It's a very specific power, and that power is to tell you that Vibrevent is here.
Vibrevent time. For anyone who's listening for the first time, we always like to start our show off with a little icebreaker called Vibe or Vent, where we each take a beat and we talk about something we're either happy about and vibing about this week or something that pisses us off that we need to vent about and get off our chest. So, Ishik, would you like to start us out today? Are you vibing or venting?
I'm vibing. I am vibing because despite many terrible things happening all the time, yesterday, last night, today was a good thing for once. There was a mayoral election in New York where we originally are from, or at least myself, I'm originally from. And it went awesome, actually. It was a mayoral primary for anyone who's not familiar with U.S. politics, let alone specifically New York mayoral politics. The front runners were Dr. Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo. We're Andrew Cuomo, who's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
A disgraced assaulter, bad person.
You're not wrong.
Who has a ton of name recognition and is part of like a political dynasty of 50 years or more. And up and comer Zohran Mamdani, who is actually kind of an old friend of mine. Years ago, probably close to 10 years, maybe 8-9 years ago, he and I and like 2-3 other, people in DSA and Democratic Socialists of America in New York were working a city council campaign together. So yeah, we spent an entire summer every single day either walking, hitting doors, or in a tiny little office together like 8-9 years ago. And yeah, he was a cool dude. I liked him a lot. It's been awesome to see. I've been following his campaign since like the first mailer he set out. I've been on his mailing list since he was running for assembly.
I remember when you got the email that he was running for office and you were like, oh, Zohran's running for office.
Yeah, that was like
and here we are.
It's fucking sick. But yeah, so not only did he win his primary, which is a huge upset, but also one of the other people who was in that team of like 4 or 5 people, Kayla Santos Rosso, she was the campaign manager, also was in a primary race that she won to be city councilor. So it was very cool that like 2 of the 4 or 5 people who were in that office every single day just won an election yesterday. And it's a huge dub. It's a huge win. And I'm really proud of him. It's been a lovely thing to see. Anyways, I would love to get off of this topic. It's enough blathering about fucking politics, electoral politics at that. Dr. Batty, I'd love to throw over to you. What are you feeling? Are you vibing today? Are you venting today? Something pissing you off? Are you feeling good? What's up?
Well, despite the state of the world, which does definitely bring me down sometimes, I am really vibing today because I just proposed to my lady friend last week. And it was so fun, and I totally surprised her, and she's very hard to surprise. So I was really happy with myself that she didn't suspect a thing. And and it was in front of her family and my other partner and her daughter. And so it was just it was really, really beautiful. And it's just wonderful. And it's such a dream of mine because I've always just seen myself having 2 life partners. And So like, obviously this isn't a legal, marriage, but just to just stand up and be like, this is also my life partner. Like, I'm telling you, society, that like this is also like my life partner as well. And so it's more of a cultural significance. And so I've been still like grinning from it.
You're glowing.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm so happy, and I'm excited to plan a big gay wedding.
Yay! So she's not your lady friend, she's your fiance.
I know, that's true. I'll be like, hey, hi, fiance. How you doing?
Congratulations.
That's so lovely. That might be one of my favorite vibes that we've had on the show.
Yeah, it's really
That's a really special
sweet.
one.
So yeah, beautiful polyam moment.
Aw.
How are you gonna follow that? I don't think you can.
I don't know. Well, it's not every day someone gets engaged to a life partner, so yeah. But I think, I am also vibing. It's an all vibe day. I think
Boo! I'm
much-
venting now.
you're gonna find something to be mad about.
Yeah, I'm
now.
venting
You need to
now.
balance it out. You're
I'm
mad
not-
that I'm happy.
I'm mad that we're all too happy. There's too much happiness. I'm sad.
If we can all be happy this day and age, I think that's a good
fair point.
feat.
So what are you vibing about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm vibing about a few things, but I think what I'm going to go with for today is that I have a crush on somebody.
Ooh.
No, it's really cute and sweet and communicative, and everybody, like, their partner is like cheering on, and like their partner found a video where they thought that I looked really cute and showed it to my crush and was like, oh, you need to go talk to Genevieve, like tell her how good she looks. And I was like, okay, this is such a sweet, heartwarming, like everybody's happy for everybody moment. So just no bad news.
I'm feeling great. You're happy. Like, we were talking about how you were doing squid arms all over the place, and we identified like, oh,
You don't
yeah,
gotta blow up my spot like that, but yeah, I was on.
You're just going on.
I do. I've been wiggly because I'm happy.
And then we identified that was some very cute new relationship energy stuff. And
Okay, this is enough.
oh, when I wanted to balance out the happiness, then I'm a downer. But when you want to know more praise, then it's cute.
So yes, it's a good day. Apparently,
It's a good
for
day.
all of us.
It's
all
a good
around.
day.
That's very exciting. I'm happy for you.
Well, enough about us
Yeah.
and our silly bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about time. Menashe, will you tell us a bit about your life? Tell us about your polyamory. You know, we introduced you up front as polyamorous, and we'd love to hear what that means for you, and how that looks, what the relationships are in your life, and how that's kind of structured.
Absolutely. So, like, my partner that I've been with the longest, we've been together since 2009. We were friends for like 7 years before that. So we've known each other like half of each other's lives. We are both Iranian. We got legally married. We did like the whole big wedding thing at the time, something that I never envisioned myself doing. But for me, it's a way that you're like telling the community, like, this is my love. It looked very traditional, right? A man, a woman, both Iranian, right? Like, and little did anyone know at our wedding, the Iranians, little did they know that like we were non-monogamous even at that time, but like we looked very traditional. And so we had this like immediate acceptance from society. And then my lady friend and I have been together for almost 5 years. With her, like, I really, I really wanted to, again, show this like public commitment of love, but the reaction has been very different. I mean, the people that have accepted us always like still accept us, but just like reaction from, I know Iranians is going to be such a completely different story. And not to pick on Iranians, because I think a lot of groups would probably not be okay. Like, why are you marrying this, another person? Like, you already are married, like family members and community members who, are like, I guess, who are just treating this so differently. And like, what do I do with my feelings about this person when they've really supported this one relationship and haven't supported this other relationship? For me personally, those have been like more of the challenges that I have recently. yeah, I would say like those are, and then as far as like a day in the life of, I live with my partner that I'm legally married to, and my partner that I'm engaged to. She lives about 10 minutes away with her daughter. She's solo polyamorous. She does not wish to nest with anyone, and other than her daughter, of course. And so she actually, I see her at least, do at least one overnight with her. We sometimes have more depending on if there's events going on. And usually during the week, like we'll see each other for a few hours at a time, watch some of our shows. So that's about like, I guess, a week in the life of my polyamory.
Hmm. So whenever somebody is drawn to a label, I'm always curious about why they like that label. So you've called your partner that you just proposed to your lady friend, and I'm wondering what it is that you like about that term or why you both chose that.
I come from academia, and so partner was very common to use as for like a romantic partner. So that's what I've always said. But she's a lawyer. For her partner has a very professional like context. It's not, the same context at all. So she didn't really like that term for us. So she actually came up with it. She actually, because she was like, girlfriend feels like too young, like so she came up with lady friend actually, and it works well, even though like the word lady has like some different connotations, but I feel like lady friend, I don't know, I just really like it. And then on when we text each other, it capitalizes it.
Aw, it knows now.
Yeah.
You chained your phones.
And then as far as like my journey of polyamory, I feel like when I was younger, I think we all sort of buy into the conditioning of our upbringing. And I grew up in Texas, first generation immigrant, so pretty conservative upbringing, which I sort of bought into, I think, for a long time. But as I got older, especially like in my late teen years, early 20s, I started to feel like, well, I started to come out more in terms of my queerness, but I started to have this realization because I realized like I just wasn't doing monogamy well. Like I was always very honest about, the things I did, but it wasn't, but I did cheat. Like not to sugarcoat it, like I did cheat in the context of those relationships before I had the language, and I would tell the person immediately. So I wouldn't lie about it, but I was like, when I got to a point where I was thinking, okay, I'm just not good at this. So I'm just not supposed to be in relationships, I guess.
No.
So there was so many like fewer resources than there are now. Like there were a few things out there for sure, but there just wasn't as many resources. But I stumbled across an article about non-monogamy, and I was like, it was like a light bulb. And then I started to really like identify with the idea that nobody really owns my body, and like what I do when I'm with someone else is not a reflection of my feelings about any other partners, because I'm like present with each person. And so that really led me to like just really embracing that identity. And so especially when I found the word polyamorous, that made so much sense to me, because I was like, oh, like multiple loves. And like, that's what I want. I want multiple loves, like I want to be able to take their relationships to the fullest capacity that they can be. So it's been a really beautiful journey. But like, I think you were saying, Genevieve, we're always learning, right? Like there's so much possibility in non-monogamy for like just new things.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about, you were saying how you struggled in monogamy, right? That you would cheat. I actually am interested to hear a little bit more about those conversations. I'm assuming that was with people who weren't interested in non-monogamy, that they were expecting monogamy, right? And what did that look like for you? And how did those conversations go?
Well, they didn't go well because they hadn't really signed up for non-monogamy. And honestly, I don't even call it non-monogamy because it was cheating, like it wasn't ethical. Up until like my 30s, I only dated men pretty much. I had only dated men. Not because I really wanted to date, women and non-binary folk, but I just wasn't, I didn't have the opportunity. And I think I was still trying to accept myself. But the men that I was with really bought into like a lot of slut shaming and then again, don't get me wrong, like I take responsibility that I should not have done those things. But then I would get like called a slut and, a slut now it's like, yeah, that's a great thing. But at the time, a slut was horrible to call someone. It hadn't been reclaimed at that point. It was so, and these were like my partners, calling me these things. And, again, I'm not saying that like I was right in the situation by any means, but it ended up making me feel really ashamed, both because of like what I'd done, but also because I felt like I was the problem. I'm like, why can't I just be, monogamous? So I think now if I were to give advice to people who are in similar situations, I would say, well, one, obviously if you're not in a relationship and if you're thinking you're non-monogamous, like date not other non-monogamous folk, like even before that, pick partners who are open-minded in general, like who are not, I think perpetuating oppression by, judging like different groups and such. So recognizing that like if it is truly part of who you are, I don't think it's sustainable to just push it down. I think the way that we're conditioned, sometimes people do, even just bringing up the topic of non-monogamy, it is a sad truth that sometimes it'll change. Some people feel like that changes their relationship forever and they can never look at that person the same. And so like, that's something to also consider and like it, but also sometimes that's okay because it's so important to who you are that like that's something that you need to express, you need to engage with that part of yourself.
So the partner that you got legally married to, did you I'm guessing you started out monogamous or no? Did you start out knowing you wanted non-monogamy with that partner?
So it's interesting because we were good friends before we got together. Well, and we were friends with benefits for a amount of time as well. But so we like started to find this literature and would share it with each other like around the same time. So we were starting to realize that like we really identified with this, idea that nobody owns your body and that like, that love is freedom. And, so we started to really talk about those values together. So by the time we actually started to be together, we like we already kind of knew that we were gonna be non-monogamous. So we had like a brief time at the beginning where we were monogamous, but it was more so because of trying to establish our own connection. And it, again, it didn't last that long, but we always knew that we would be non-monogamous again. Like it was never okay, we're gonna do this forever. Like that was never a discussion.
Yeah.
I would also love to get just like a little bit of a bridge in terms of kind of going from the start of, opening up with your nesting partner, or like wanting to explore non-monogamy with him, to you meet your lady friend in 2020. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how you met and going from there to kind of how it is now to the point of proposing to them?
So we actually met through OkCupid, which is so funny that, like, because the online dating, I think, can be so hard. But so it just, got very, very lucky. And as far as like the process of becoming someone that I would propose to, I mean, I think like I've always had space in my heart for two life partners. So that's always been something that I've discussed with my nesting partner. It's something that, even before we got together, we were talking about it. So that's something that like already the foundation was there in terms of that conversation with my nesting partner about it. And then with with my lady friend, I think we just, would check in about how we were feeling, what was going on. And we were, continuing to be on the same page and continuing to be really committed. And I think it was about 3 years ago when we talked about doing some kind of like commitment ceremony, or like I knew that I wanted to integrate someone into my life just as fully, just as publicly. That I always sort of knew, but I guess the specifics of like proposing, like I in my marriage to my nesting partner, we didn't have a proposal. Like I never was interested in doing that. I never was interested in being proposed to or anything. So, and I don't even know where my wedding ring is. I think I have one. I think we bought them at some point, but like I don't know where it is. So to me that was never, but that's what's so beautiful. Like I loved planning a proposal for her because it was like, I know like how happy that's going to make her. And I know like, and just the idea, especially of me with my ADHD brain, planning something such a big thing was like, it meant so much to her, for me to plan that.
Aw.
One other thing was, I think that is important to mention because people always have questions about this, is her daughter. So she had a rule that no one meets, like dating partners don't meet her daughter until they're 6 months in. And so like I didn't meet her daughter for a long time, but I did not anticipate how much I would just fall head over heels for her daughter also. Like she's just so great. And we have our own relationship. We go painting together. So that's also been really lovely. And I know that can be sometimes hard for people like, well, monogamous folk to understand, like, what about the children? What about the children? But it's like, what kid doesn't want more love, more adults giving them presents and, taking them out to fun adventures, and three. And then, if you count my nesting partner, like 4 adults who really, really love her, so much, that are kind of like these, parental figures in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So when she asked me to be her stepmom like a year ago, I cried because I was so moved.
Aww.
And she's very direct like her mom. So I took her out for painting, and just out of the blue, she said, I heard that you were so like emotional that when I asked you to be my stepmom, that you cried. I was like, dang, she just like called me out. Yeah, like I did cry because it just meant so much to you.
Aww.
You, again, up front, neurospicy, right? And I think a lot of the time when you're discussing your content, that element of both your expertise as a therapist, but also your personal experience. And so, yeah, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your personal experience with that. Do you feel like that comes up at all in your relationships, and maybe a little bit about how it does?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great topic. And I have a series on Instagram with Dr. Han Ren about ADHD and non-monogamy. So it is definitely like something different in the brain as far as like the way that the reward system works. And so like impulsivity, attention, focus, that is something that people always link with ADHD. What's less discussed is the emotional dysregulation. And to me, for the majority of people with ADHD, and for including myself, the emotional dysregulation is actually the hardest part. Growing up with ADHD, particularly if you're not diagnosed, it can be also a form of trauma sometimes, because like if you are, let's say, acting out and you're like punished for it, and the fact that we've been rejected a lot for our ADHD. So that's where there's a term called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, that it's not just unique to ADHD, but also the other, like anxiety, people with depression also experience it, but it's this like very heightened sensitivity to any hint of rejection. It doesn't even have to be like actual rejection, but just if you perceive it, or if it even just smells a tiny bit like rejection, it's like you just become undone. There's a really powerful quote that in this book I'm looking at right now, it's called ADHD for Smart Ass Women. But in that book, like I think it's in that book where she says, when you were a child and you looked at someone's face and that look of disappointment, and you realize like, this is how my whole life's going to be. Like, I'm just going to be letting people down. I'm just going to be disappointing people. And like, you try so hard and you like, it still happens.
I mean, I'm going to say, like, I was actually getting a little emotionally affected because you were very succinctly describing a lot of my childhood and early life experiences, and then how that's kind of projected into later. Like, I was like getting really like flashed back into some childhood experiences, and then kind of not was not my intention at all, but like, yeah,
That means a lot. I mean, I think I really appreciate that you are open to being like emotionally impacted because I think it is very emotional. It's super emotional. Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I know for me, if there's ever any kind of like conflict or like, I immediately think it's my fault. I immediately apologize. I immediately say that it's my fault because I am so used to something feeling like my fault. So that's a way that like I've really had to unlearn of like pause when something first happens instead of just immediately saying what I first think, which is like that it's my fault, that like stop and just give it a second. And also just like responding very strongly in disproportionate ways to things. So like early in my non-monogamy journey, before I had received my diagnosis, the way that I would communicate, I would lash out. I would say things like that were like now looking back, I'm just like, that's horrible. Like I should not like my feelings were valid, but I did not need to say those things. And that actually is not even a reflection of how I feel, but I was just so dysregulated. So I was just like saying things that were, like in my mind with no filter. And it sounds horrible, should have stayed in the drafts. But having ADHD, I think there's again a lot of strengths that we bring as well, like with the whimsical, the joy, being sexual. A lot of people with ADHD are very sexual. But then there's also the challenges, and I think it's just about being aware of those challenges. That you might be super excited about NRE. So like not to get carried away, or like when you do feel that rejection, like doesn't mean you're actually being rejected. And how can you develop like coping skills that you can learn to self-soothe in those situations?
Now that you've had this much time, both as a professional with expertise on the matter, but also as just an adult who has had time to develop coping mechanisms around this and to start recognizing your patterns, how do you communicate to partners, especially new partners, about those patterns for yourself? Is there an example of a time that you like saw that behavior starting to come up and then you were able to communicate with them and develop, like work through it so that you weren't engaging in that pattern with them?
One big thing for me, honestly, has been choosing partners that are open to learning about it. And I think just early on when I'm getting to know someone, I think it's just an open topic of conversation of like, this is one of the things I experience. These are some of the ways that it shows up for me in the world. And then together we come up with what works for us. So what like if we're both heated, what would work? What do you need in that moment? And what do I need in that moment? And like, how can we work together to come up with a solution or just a way to navigate it? And to have those conversations when you're not heated is really important. Like generally we talk about issues when they're already escalated and they're already a problem, but to try to have those conversations, especially about conflict, not while you're in conflict, but prior to that. And I think that's just part of care is trying to understand the ways that we might be different. My lady friend now, so my nesting partner has ADHD, but my lady friend like is very focused, and more emotionally reserved than me. And I'm just like very emotional, very expressive. And when I've been around people who are neurotypical sometimes and just very emotionally reserved, and like there's this, strong connection, like sometimes I've felt, am I too much for them? Like, am I overwhelming them? But like, I've never felt that with her because I feel like she really like wants to know me as I am and she accepts me as I am, not who maybe she thinks I should be. Or so I think also just it's so like I don't know, a red flag, an orange flag, maybe when somebody is not willing to hear those things about you. If that's something that's important to you. I mean, for some people, it's not important. I mean, it's a compatibility thing. But if that is an important part of you and how you function and like part of your challenges and you want to share it, I think it's best to find people who are also like invested in that as well.
I was thinking like I notice that I tend to be drawn to people with ADHD. So I like a lot of structure and I don't like surprises. And I apparently love people. Opposites attract. ADHD with golden retriever energy is my type. And so yeah, I think like, yeah, I like my puppies.
I'm not. That is not a sexual
No,
thing.
not that kind.
Don't internet. I know
No
you.
judgment if it were.
No judgment if it were, but I know you,
clarity.
internet. Don't be making fan art out there, okay?
Well, now you're guaranteed they will.
I did literally do a puppy
Yeah.
thing with my tongue out. Maybe this is on me. That's on me.
But yeah, so like I think, you know, so much of what I've had to learn over the last you know, I don't know, decade of just growing up and being older, but also getting into like a deeper, longer term relationship with people with ADHD is like understanding, like not ascribing intent, you know, because like the whole like, oh, if you oversleep or if you forget something, or like if the thought is you could have done it different, you didn't care about me, so you didn't do it, or like, you know, then it's now it's a conflict. Versus if I better understand how your brain works, if I understand that like, okay, memory is like works a certain way for you, or time just sort of blurs and that just happens. That's good for me to know. So then it becomes like an accommodation of like, okay, so how do we meet in the middle here? Because I really like schedules and balance. How do I meet you where like within what's you're able to commit to? Because then I wouldn't want you to like overcommit and then not be able to do it, and then the shame spiral happens and I'm mad and like all of that. So like, but I'm curious, you know, especially like definitely your personal experience, but also just as a professional, like what do you usually offer to people when they're like, hey, you know, my needs seem to clash with yours. I like structure. This person needs room for like spontaneity. How do we find a middle ground? Are there any tools that you would recommend anyone who finds themselves in that sort of arrangement?
Yeah, well, that's personal and professional, honestly, because my lady friend is also very structured, very like always early, which I'm like, how? How?
What are you, some kind of time wizard?
Like she tries so hard and she's still early. Like I try so hard and I'm still late. But yeah, as far as like, you know, I think one is like, I think you said it really beautifully of just appreciating each other's strengths and like what you bring of, you know, that it's not necessarily that this person, that it wasn't the intent to do something bad or to not show care or something like that, but it's more like, okay, this is how this person is functioning. And also recognizing the societal positioning of both of those things, right? So society rewards structure, like our dominant culture, right? Obviously there's various contexts, but like I think general dominant, you know, capitalist culture and like, you know, dominant US culture really values, you know, schedules and structure and those kinds of things. And so I think coming to this with the understanding of like that this is like something that like neither of them are right or wrong, right? But like one of them is more valued. And what does that mean for you as a couple, right? Maybe that means that like someone who hasn't really thought about that, they haven't really thought about like how much maybe they've lived in a neurotypical way, you know what I mean? Or, you know, so I think sometimes like just being aware of how society has valued and treated you and what you've internalized about those. So I think always having that underlying aspect of just compassion for ourselves, for the other person, as well as, you know, just this sense of like presence and like non-judgment, like coming into those conversations, I think is really important. But yeah, I think there's a lot of just beauty like in the fact that you can be so different. It's just that it does also require more conversations probably.
Yeah. When you were talking, I was remembering this person that I was getting to know and felt excited about. The way that their ADHD, or like one of the ways that looked for them, was that they would just like forget their phone existed or forget looking at their phone, or not that but it would be like compartmentalized. They would check a thing and then put it down. So if I texted, I mean, a week might go by, you know? And I used to think like, well, if you wanted to, you would text me back. Like if you liked me enough. And then as I started to get to know them, I was like, oh, like I saw it in front of me. I was like, you legit forgot to text your mom back about a health thing. Like this is just like not personal. That helped a lot. But then it also was like, oh, if this is how you operate, even if I don't understand it, this is just what I can expect from you, then what kind of relationship can I be in with you? Because obviously, like I can be in a daily relationship with you, Ashik, but like some people, I'm just like, if I get so much anxiety, not being able to find a middle ground with you, then like basically I was like, I need to not see this person as a possible daily or weekly person. That would just be too stressful. I would just want them to change too much. And then I'd be pissed at them. And then they'd feel shame. So I wound up like talking with them and I was just like, hey, you know, would you want to be spicy friends? Like whenever you're around, like we can hang out. They wound up moving to another country anyway. So I was like, that wound up, being a better place for us to be. But then I wasn't bothered.
Yeah. And that's one thing I love about non-monogamy too, is just this, we can change the form of our connection. Like just because it didn't work out in this one way doesn't mean like we have to throw it all away, and like you found a great way that works for both of you. And like, you're neither one of you are frustrated and it's just like a happy, a joyous occasion when you see each other. So yeah, I love that.
So, you were talking earlier about like how am I going to phrase my question here? So basically, you've been very open about your health, about your healing. You've shared that you are a survivor of breast cancer. And earlier in March, you mentioned a diagnosis that you struggled to walk for a while. I have a couple of questions of how are you doing currently, but also how, if at all, has your relationship with your health shown up in your relationships, or has it changed your relationships at all in that way?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I've been cancer free now for 3 years, which is great. So with the breast cancer, I think, I think with both of the health issues, honestly, my partners were just so instrumental in my healing. They were just like, I don't know what I would have done without them. I didn't really want to be around people during both of those health issues that I had. I really didn't want to be around anyone, but they were like, they just took care of me in so many ways. My nesting partner took me to radiation when I had to do radiation. And I had to go every day for 4 weeks. So he took me every day to my radiation. And so like, I can't imagine having gone through it without them, having gone through both of those. For me, the second one, so I was diagnosed with lumbar spinal stenosis. That one in some ways was actually harder than the breast cancer for me specifically, just because like my breast cancer was caught pretty early. It was like, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this. And then your prognosis is actually pretty good. It's actually like 95% that if you do all the treatments, that it's not going to come back. So there was like a clear path, a clear end to it. Whereas when I had my back issue, I went to physical therapy. Like I did all these things and it wasn't getting better. And in fact, it was just getting worse and worse until like I could barely walk anymore. So for me, that one was a lot more difficult emotionally. Physically, it was more difficult because it was just incredibly painful. Emotionally, it was very isolating. I had, no social life. Being able to like do stuff in a wheelchair actually was progress for a little bit of time. And then I had a cane that I was walking with. There's not that many things that I fear in life, but one of the things I've always feared is physical pain. But then when it was there and it was so severe, like it was like an 8 or 9 every day, all I could do was cry. Like there was nothing else I could do. And I think if you haven't ever been in that kind of pain, like people sometimes will be like, well, think positive or just do this. And it's like, no, sometimes like you really can't do anything. Sometimes you just can just, all you can do is be in the pain.
Mm. Yeah. I'm just glad that you're feeling like I'm glad that you had the extra support, and I'm glad that that wasn't a permanent place that you had to stay in, that it wasn't pain that had to be at an 8 or 9 every day forever.
Thank you.
So,
Like a kind of aha moment with my non-monogamy was learning, because when you're dealing with like nerve pain, one of the things you have to realize is, when is this pain telling me I need to stop, versus when is it just like, okay, this is just part of the pain of healing. And like, I actually need to learn how to like be comfortable with it, which is kind of similar to what you do in non-monogamy of like, when is this pain telling me like, I need to actually leave this relationship? This is no longer serving me, versus like the growing pains of being in a relationship, the growing pains of being in non-monogamy. What is my pain trying to tell me in this moment? And then honoring that, like not just ignoring it.
You often discuss non-monogamy and kind of therapy as a whole from this perspective of liberation. I would love if you can give like a brief primer for listeners about how would you represent that as an idea in terms of how we discuss or look at non-monogamy.
Polyamory, non-monogamy, none of it I don't think is inherently liberation, because I think that people can still, have any relationship practice really and still be, bogged down by like heteronormativity, for example. A lot of societies really, that's really like the sort of backbone of the society. Like, it really benefits capitalism when there's these nuclear families. And essentially, I think that when you question that through practicing non-monogamy, I think, yes, like you're inherently questioning norms, but someone can still be very much like not necessarily geared toward liberation and still be non-monogamous. So just to like distinguish those a little bit. And like a lot of the things that we look at in non-monogamy literature is from a queer lens, but it's a white queer lens. And there's a lot of problematic things about that white queer lens. And so to me, and I have a article that I wrote with Avita Sawyers, and it was published in the journal Sexualities. And it's about specifically Black queer lens for viewing polyamory, and how like we need to really adopt that lens to really view it as liberation. And so like liberation has to really be intersectional. And intersectional, by what I mean by that is like honoring various identities about a person. Because definitely my experience as an Iranian American absolutely affects my non-monogamy and how I feel in non-monogamous communities as well. Like just more of a grounding in what liberation I think actually should be.
I'm curious like if you have an example or a time when you were really challenging something internally that you're like, oh, this is where the rubber hits the road, is like, I'm practicing liberation right here, right now. This is what this looks like. Do you have an example that comes to mind at all?
Coming out about my own non-monogamy, because I have a lot of people in the Iranian community, older generation, that are, that obviously have never heard of such a thing. And so for me, and I always sort of weighed that, because I was like, I don't want to choose, like, I feel like I'm choosing between my people. I'm choosing between like my Iranian community and like my polyamorous and queer communities. Like if I come out, then I'm like choosing that group. And so, but what I realized was, no, there are non-monogamous and queer people within the Iranian community too, actually. And I'm actually centering them. And there's been I've also gotten a lot of positive feedback from people actually like in Iran about the things I post, and Iranians here in the US, especially like of younger generations. So I think, but that was it took me a long time, because I felt like I was betraying my culture. But then I realized like, this isn't even about me. Like this, because one of the things like my mom would say is, why do you have to come out? Like you have all this, you look so privileged, like you're a professor, you're a psychologist, you are married, like people think very highly of you. Like, why do you have to come out? And I'm like, why, who better than me? because you already know me for so long. And if you are going to think differently about me now, then maybe you should, I think it's going to be more likely that you'll think about it, you know? So I was like, who better than me? So when I realized like, it's not about me specifically, it's about like this part that I want to play in the collective liberation of, non-monogamous and queer folk. Like, so it was really exciting, empowering. And now, I mean, my business is called Polytherapist. So I would say that was when I realized like, okay, like, no, this is going to be hard. And yes, I'm going to get backlash from me personally, but like, I want to take this step.
Obviously, I mean, we've touched a number of times about your Iranian heritage, your cultural background, and your tie to it. And obviously, we didn't plan this at all. We've had this on the books for quite some time, but Iran is very much in the news right now in terms of geopolitical events because Trump's a fucking fascist piece of shit, and Israel is on a genocidal warpath. So I'm clearly putting my finger on the scale of where I view what's going on, but I think I just kind of want to touch base with you as a person who has so much ties to your Iranian community as a whole and the country and the culture. How are you? And how is your community and how are you navigating this time right now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's so much happens every day with Trump being in office. Like it's just madness. I mean, it's been a roller coaster because I think like for the first week or two, well, what has it been? 2 weeks? Yeah, since Iran was invaded. I've been very worried. I've been mostly worried about my family in Iran. My dad's side of the family still lives there. They are mostly in Tehran. They've had to evacuate. So I worry about them. And I just worry about like what's going to happen, like the Islamophobia now that's going to happen as a result of this. Because even though I think when I compare it to like, let's say the Iraq war, I think there's way more people saying like these are lies now, which is encouraging. But I mean, there's still going to be a large part of the population that believes it, right? So I think, I worry, and not so much, I mean, not as much for myself, but because I mean, I live in California, like I'm very lucky. I also am light skinned. People don't automatically read me as Middle Eastern. Like my nesting partner, he's much darker, he has facial hair and he's a man. So like he is, sometimes read as like people call him like terrorist or those kinds of things. It just hurts my heart because there had been a little bit of progress in Iran. There was the Iran Women Life Freedom movement. And so there was like starting in like in a lot of places, women were leading, the revolution. But like what they did really set Iran back. I've heard anywhere from 20 years to 50 years. And so even if nothing else happens, like this set us back so much. So my heart really hurts. I feel helpless. I feel sad. And I have a job where I have to care for people. Like I do therapy. So, I have to give, there's a lot of energy that I have to hold a space for other people. So I can't be constantly dysregulated. Mm. That is something that sometimes I think in activist spaces or sometimes in Iranian activist spaces, but I've seen it in other activists that it's like, if you're not constantly dysregulated, like you're not like down for the cause or something. And I don't have the luxury of being able to do that. If I did, I wouldn't be able to do my job well. And it's not fair to the people who are coming to seeking me out for help. Like I have to be regulated for them. So sometimes I feel guilty for that. But then I realize like, it's not that I'm unaffected. I am very affected and I cry about it regularly. It's just that it's been a lesson for me to just like take care of myself, be present, take care of my body, my mind, my spirit. Because at the end of the day, like that's really all we can do sometimes.
Thank you, Dr. Batty, so much for joining us. It was lovely to speak with you, to hear more about your story. And yeah, I would love to invite you to share where people can find you online and yeah, anything that you're working on right now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely to speak with y'all.
You can find me across all platforms at Dr. Batty. So it's doctor spelled out and Badiee.
Dr. Batty.
Dr. Batty.
Which is an awesome name.
Which is,
objectively.
we haven't, how did we made it to all the way to the end? And we haven't said how rad
Dr.
it
Batty.
is. I'm Dr. Batty. And in addition to definitely checking out Dr. Batty on all of those platforms, if you're looking for more polyamory content, Genevieve, as always, is on TikTok and Instagram at Chill Polyamory. She's also on YouTube, also at Chill Polyamory, where she does long-form video essays about non-monogamy in film and TV.
So you can support those projects and this podcast directly on Patreon, where you'll get early access to videos, private stories, live Q&As. I offer a pen pal service option if you want to stay in touch. So that is patreon.com/chillpolyamory.
And for all of our listeners, this has been I Could Never. And remember that just because you've never done something before doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Bye.